Alright guys, this is Andrew, and welcome back to another episode of How to Get Better at X or Y. Is there an official title to this series or video? Probably not, but the point of this video really is to kind of talk about more playstyle tips and random things on how to improve your gameplay for a particular hero. And today I figured, well, you know, I've been playing a lot of Hanzo for the past week or so, and I figured, yeah, why not? Let's just do a Hanzo video, because, you know, he's considered one of the more difficult characters to learn. I know a lot of people will probably be like, Candy, the hitboxes for the arrows is like giant basketballs. But I would say, considering his Stormbow is not hit scan and has projectile speed, there are certain challenges associated with this character. Now the first tip I want to talk about, or a collection of tips that I want to talk about, would be about the Sonic Arrow. Yeah, this first tip is going to be more like a reminder than really a tip, and that is to make sure your Sonic Arrow is not on cooldown for too long. It's such a powerful ability. You know, be sure to target choke points, places of high traffic, different entryways, intersections, or even covering yourself for flanking routes. You know, it's a very, very strong, powerful move. It benefits you and your teammates for being able to keep track of where the enemy is. One cool thing about the Sonic Arrow is that you can actually tag enemies with it. It will do 120 damage or 240 damage at headshot, which means you can't kill a Reaper or Mei. However, I would say tagging enemies is for some reason really satisfying, because basically they'll be tagged for the entire duration of the arrow. The arrow will stick on them and you'll just see wherever they go for the whole duration. Pretty fun to do, really useful against flankers or high mobility type heroes, you know, that way your entire team can see exactly where they are. You do sacrifice some damage, but you get some nice intel. Anyways, moving on to the next tip, and that is the double Sonic Arrow trick. This only works on defense when you're playing on a payload or hybrid payload map. Essentially what you do is, if you're on defense, during the setup time, go to the other team, spawn like right in front of them, and shoot a Sonic Arrow right straight up into the air at around 18 seconds as it counts down. Now what this will do is time the arrow, the Sonic Arrow, precisely so that it will fall back into the ground shortly after the match starts, and then you can fire a second Sonic Arrow. That way you have two Sonic Arrows on the field, which means double the vision, double the awareness. It's just a jolly good time. Now I know you can do the same thing for regular arrows as well as the Scatter Arrow, but I find wasting that much amount of time is usually not worth it, because the enemy team, you know, will probably see you standing in front of their spawn shooting arrows into the air. So that's more of a cheese tactic, you know, shooting scatter arrows and regular arrows into the air. I'm sure some of you guys may have had luck with that, but from my experience, the most important one to get a double arrow out for is the Sonic Arrow. It's a little bit more reliable as far as the value it presents. Now, the next thing I want to talk about would be the Stormbow, how to aim with it, how to handle it, and arguably it's one of the more difficult weapons to use in Overwatch. That's just because of its projectile speed as well as its projectile drop. It is an arrow, it's not going to be hit scan, unfortunately. So that's kind of the more obvious stuff though, right? I mean, everyone knows, like, okay, it drops over distance, you gotta shoot a little bit higher, but one of the things that I have been thinking about is the Stormbow isn't too bad in CQC because it doesn't exactly drop very much at even out to medium ranges, right? But once you start going to long ranges, that starts being a problem. You know, landing a headshot on someone far away, moving, especially zigzag, holy shit, it just becomes a nightmare. Now what I've been finding is that in certain situations you don't actually have to lead track your targets that much. One of the situations that come to mind specifically is those points when you're kind of far in the back, there is a choke point up ahead, there's enemies on the other side, they're sort of dodging in and out from cover, right? There's like 3-4 guys peeking out from that choke point, from that corner. What I found to be more effective than trying to track one guy and lead the shot, however meters side to side he moves, and try to compensate, that becomes a little unreliable. I found a lot more luck just adjusting to the drop so that it is just at head level and just shooting in a general direction into the enemies that are all kind of crisscrossing each other and zigzagging, you know, around that corner. sooner or later, you're going to tag one of those guys. I don't know, it's probably because of the giant hitboxes in Overwatch, but just know that at longer distances, you know, it may be more worth it to just shoot, you know, at the enemies, at the clump of enemies at head level, rather than try to pick out one enemy and try to calculate, you know, predict where he's going to, you know, 80 zigzag to, because that can be a little tedious. Now, I'm not saying you should not lead your targets or that you should just, you know, randomly shoot your arrow. Obviously, if there's, you know, a target far off in the distance and they're moving quite predictably, you know, they're trying to run to cover or something, obviously then you're going to want to take your time to aim your shot. What I'm talking about is those situations when the enemy kind of sees you, you know, they're kind of on high alert, they know where you are, so they're kind of just staying mobile, but they're staying mobile within a very finite space, and there's like 3 or 4 of them, just 3 or 4 heads bobbing around an area of like 10 meters or something, right? Space of 10 meters. It becomes quite a bit easier to land those headshots. Granted, you keep your crosshairs right at that head level. So this sort of applies to CQC as well. CQC situations, close quarters combat, where you are just trying to land a clutch headshot so you can kill someone really quickly. Obviously, you know, if scatter arrow is down, if you don't have it, landing a headshot in CQC can be a game breaker. It will do 250 damage to the target, which is a shit ton. And yeah, it's all about making sure your arrow is right at head level. And you can also use Sonic Arrow to kind of aid you in trying to predict where the enemy's head's going to be when they pop around the corner. Sonic Arrow is great because they can actually see that you have Sonic Arrow on, so they don't know that you know, which is astounding and it's amazing. But yeah, landing a headshot in CQC or a scatter shot in CQC or even a body shot in CQC is great, but say if you needed more damage, right? Don't forget you have melee. Now this is something that I am personally working on, and that is to melee after a shot that is pretty close up, because it will cancel your arrow animation, which is quite handy. In certain clutch scenarios when the enemy is really low and you just need that quick, you know, burst damage, firing an uncharged shot, which does 29 damage, plus the melee, may rack up just enough damage for you to take them out. Of course, these are more niche situations, you know, it's not always going to work, but, you know, doing over 2 bars of health is pretty handy in those emergency scenarios. A cool little route you can take on Hanamura, and this is sort of like a mini tip, a side tip if you will, just the tip, is that if you play Hanzo, you can actually flank around pretty decently on Hanamura, specifically the last objective as shown here. It's a pretty nice little tactic, just make sure you shoot down those little fences. Now, the last collection of tips that I want to touch on would be proper Dragon Strike usage. Now, everyone knows that abilities like Zarya's or Reinhardt's ultimate, they're amazing, absolutely amazing for setting up Dragon Strikes. Dragon Strikes on their own are a little tricky, especially if you don't know how to use them correctly. They charge up slow, they make a huge loud audio cue where Hanzo yells Japanese shit, and you know, like a lot of times you can miss a lot of enemies with your Dragon Strike. However, if you utilize its properties of being able to travel through walls, you can catch a lot of your enemies off guard. What you want to do is position yourself so that the Dragon Strike will hit as many enemies as possible in a straight line through walls, and preferably limit how much time it spends out in the open traveling through open space. What I find the most useful is to, you know, use my Sonic Arrow or have Widowmaker's ult open when I have my Dragon Strike. That way I can just shoot at enemies through walls where they don't even see me coming. It's sort of a great little tactic to use with Dragon Strike. Obviously, a good Zarya ult is always way easier to pull off, but that should be able to help you guys as far as landing your Dragon Strikes a little bit more reliably. Anyways guys, that's just about it for today. I hope you found this Hanzo How to Get Better guide somewhat useful and helpful, informative, whatnot. Obviously, I'm sure there are quite a few Hanzo experts, Hanzo specialists, or Hanzo hardcore veterans out there who probably know everything that I talked about in this video, but you know, just bear in mind that, you know, for at least for the average player or new player, maybe some of the stuff isn't necessarily readily obvious. But yeah, if you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, and if you're new, go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you want to see more video guides like this. If you got some sort of special request, let me know down in the comments. And until next time guys, I'll see you in the next video.